I'm Lily Rose, 34 years old, born and raised in San Jose. My life is all about gems and jewelry, just like it was for my parents and grandparents. Our family's jewelry store, Rose Gems, is located in San Jose's upscale shopping district. It's not just a store to me. It's my entire world. While other kids were playing in parks, I was spending time in the workshop. Instead of learning to ride a bike, I was learning how to cut stones. My dad would often sit me on his lap, guiding my small hands with his large, rough ones as we worked together. "Remember, Michelle," he'd say with a gruff but gentle voice, "it's not just about making something beautiful. It's about creating something with a story." Our family has a secret. No, we're not secretly royalty or anything like that. It's a special technique for processing gems that makes them shine like nothing else. This secret has been passed down through 5 generations and is what makes Rose Gems stand out. Guard this secret with your life, Lily. My dad told me on my 23rd birthday. It's not just our past. It's our future. And I did. I guarded it fiercely. It was my responsibility, my burden, and my key to success in a world that often didn't take young women seriously. Rose Gems didn't just succeed. It thrived. We had loyal customers who loved the unique brilliance of our pieces. Other jewelers tried to figure out our secret, but none could. The Gemstone Society's annual gala was always a glamorous event, but that year felt different. Maybe it was the champagne, or maybe it was the way my new emerald dress fit me perfectly, but I felt amazing that night. I moved through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces and making small talk. The room was filled with designer gowns and tailored suits, with everyone wearing jewels that probably cost more than my first car. "Lily, darling, you look fabulous," gushed Mary, one of our regular clients. She grabbed my hands, her eyes locking onto the ring I was wearing. "Is this one of your new pieces? It's stunning." I smiled, feeling proud. "I just finished it last week," I said. "It's part of our new Midnight Sky collection." "I must have won," Laura declared. "I'll stop by the shop next week." She then drifted off to chat with her friends. I felt a tap on my shoulder and turned around to see the most captivating pair of blue eyes I'd ever seen. "Excuse me," said the owner of those eyes, smiling in a way that could melt ice. I couldn't help but overhear. "You're Lily Rose, right?" I nodded, suddenly feeling shy. "That's me. And you are?" "Paul James," he replied, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard great things about your work." The name hit me hard. James. The James were jewelry royalty, owners of one of the largest jewelry empires in the country. And here was their heir, talking to me like I was the most interesting person in the room. "The pleasure's all mine," I managed to say, shaking his hand. "I didn't know the James would be here tonight." Paul laughed, a warm sound that made me feel like we were sharing a private joke. "We usually skip these events, but I insisted on coming this year. I've been following your work, Lily. You're making waves in the industry." I felt my cheeks flush. "That's very kind of you to say." "It's the truth," he said, his eyes sparkling. "Actually, I was hoping we could discuss a potential collaboration. How about dinner next week?" My heart skipped a beat. A collaboration with the James could take Rose Gems to the next level. But a small voice in my head whispered a warning. They were our biggest competitors. Could they be trusted? I pushed the thought aside. This was business, nothing more. "Dinner sounds great," I heard myself say. Paul's smile widened. "Excellent. I'll have my assistant set it up." He glanced over my shoulder and frowned slightly. "I'm afraid I have to mingle, but I'm looking forward to our dinner, Lily." As he walked away, I felt like I was floating. Paul James had sought me out, me, Lily Rose, the girl who spent more time with gems than people. The rest of the night was a blur. I danced, laughed, and networked, but my mind kept drifting back to those blue eyes and that dazzling smile. Paul chose a trendy restaurant in Capitola Beach, the kind of place where San Jose's elite came to see and be seen. As I walked in, I spotted him immediately, looking incredibly handsome in a tailored suit. He stood up as I approached, his eyes lighting up. "Lily," he said, taking my hand, "you look stunning." I felt a flutter in my stomach, but quickly pushed it aside. "Thank you, Paul. You clean up pretty well yourself." As we sipped our wine, the conversation flowed easily. We talked about our shared love for jewelry, swapping stories about tough clients and challenging designs. I found myself relaxing, drawn in by Paul's wit and charm. "So," I said as our main courses arrived, "you mentioned a possible collaboration at the gala. What did you have in mind?" Paul leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "I've been following your work for a while now, Lily. The way you bring out the brilliance in gems is unlike anything I've seen before. I think a partnership between Rose Gems and James Jewelry could really change the industry." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a bold statement. How would this partnership work?" "We have the resources and the reach," Paul explained. "You have the skill and the innovation. Together, we could create a line that combines the best of both our worlds." It sounded tempting, I had to admit, but years of guarding our family secret made me cautious. "And what about our individual techniques, our trade secrets?" Paul held up his hands. "Those would stay separate, of course. This would be about combining our strengths, not sharing our secrets." I nodded slowly, turning the idea over in my mind. "It's an interesting proposition. I'd need to think about it and discuss it with my team." "Of course," Paul said with an understanding smile. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As dinner went on, our conversation shifted from business to more personal topics. Paul told me about growing up in the shadow of the James Empire and the pressure to live up to his family name. I found myself opening up about my own experiences, the weight of carrying on the Rose legacy. Before I knew it, we were seeing each other regularly. Paul swept me off my feet with grand gestures and intimate moments. 2 weekends, he surprised me with a spontaneous trip to the Hawaii. "Pack a bag," he said, showing up at my door with a mischievous grin. "We're going on an adventure." I hesitated, thinking about the orders I needed to fill. "Paul, I can't just leave. I have work." He silenced me with a kiss. "The work will be there when you get back. When's the last time you took a break, Lily?" I couldn't remember, and that made me pause. Maybe he was right. Maybe I did need a break. The Hawaii felt like a dream. We spent our days relaxing on beautiful beaches, snorkeling in clear waters, and our nights dancing under the stars. It was amazing being the focus of Paul's attention. When we got back to San Jose, our relationship kept growing stronger. Paul would surprise me with rare orchids flown in from Thailand, their delicate petals showing how thoughtful he was. We'd spend evenings at fancy restaurants or quiet nights at home, talking for hours about everything and nothing. But it wasn't always perfect. The first time Paul took me to meet his parents, I felt like I was walking into a lion's den. His mother, Jessica James, looked me up and down with barely hidden dislike. "So, you're the little jeweler Paul has been spending so much time with," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I straightened up and met her gaze. "That's right, Lily Rose of Rose Gems. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. James." Paul's father, Brian James, was a bit friendlier, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. "Rose Gems," he mused, "you've been making quite a name for yourself lately. Impressive for such a small operation." The dinner was full of backhanded compliments and thinly veiled insults. At one point, Jessica accidentally spilled her red wine on my dress. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "I suppose your hands must be too rough from all that manual labor to hold delicate glassware properly." I forced a smile, even as I seethed inside. "No worries, Mrs. James. Accidents happen." Paul squeezed my hand under the table, showing silent support. Later, as he drove me home, he apologized over and over. "I'm so sorry about my parents," he said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "They can be difficult." I sighed, looking out at the San Jose skyline. "It's okay. I'm sure they're just protective of you." Paul shook his head. "It's not okay. You're important to me, Lily. They need to accept that." His words warmed my heart, pushing away the lingering chill from his parents' cold reception. As weeks turned into months, I found myself falling harder for Paul. He was everything I didn't know I wanted: charming, worldly, and clearly in love with me. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and appreciated for more than just my work. We had been dating for about 6 months when he surprised me with a trip to London. "Pack your bags, darling," he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. "We're off to the city of love." Soon, I found myself in London, strolling hand in hand with Paul along the Seine, marveling at the architecture and indulging in rich English cuisine. It was like a dream. On our last night in London, Paul took me to dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant with a view of the Tower of London. As we finished our dessert, he suddenly looked nervous. "Lily," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand, "these past months have been the happiest of my life. I can't imagine my life without you." Then, to my surprise, he stood up and got down on one knee beside our table. The other diners gasped and turned to watch. Lily rose. Paul said, pulling out a small velvet box. "Will you marry me?" I stared at the ring in shock. It was beautiful, though a small part of me couldn't help but notice it wasn't as stunning as some of my own creations. But I quickly pushed that thought aside and focused on the man kneeling before me, his eyes full of hope and love. "Yes," I heard myself say. "Yes, I'll marry you." When we returned to San Jose, reality set in. Paul's parents insisted on throwing us an engagement party, and I found myself thrown into a world of high society that I had only ever seen from the outside. The party was a lavish affair at the James Mansion. As I mingled with San Jose's elite, I couldn't help but feel out of place. These people lived in a world of old money and privilege, so different from mine. Jessica James cornered me by the champagne fountain, her smile as sharp as a diamond-tipped saw. "Lily, darling, I must say we were all quite surprised when Paul announced your engagement. It's not often a James marries outside our social circle." Before I could respond, Paul appeared at my side, placing a protective arm around my waist. "Mother, I hope you're not giving Lily a hard time." Jessica's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course not, darling. I was just welcoming Lily to the family." Later that night, as Paul and I slow danced under the crystal chandeliers, he leaned in close. "I have an idea," he whispered. "Why don't you make a special piece for my mother as a peace offering? Show her what you can do." I hesitated. The Rose family's secret wasn't something I shared easily, not even with my fiancé. But maybe Paul was right, maybe this could be a way to bridge the gap between our two worlds. The weeks after our engagement were a whirlwind of wedding planning. I threw myself into creating the perfect necklace for Jessica, hoping it would be the olive branch that could finally win her over. I spent countless hours in my workshop, pouring my heart and soul into the piece. I used rare pink diamonds and a flawless blue sapphire from my father's private collection. It was meant to be my masterpiece, a testament to my skill and the Rose family secret. One evening, as I was putting the finishing touches on the clasp, Paul stopped by the workshop. His eyes widened. "Lily, it's incredible. I've never seen anything like it." I felt a surge of pride. "Do you think your mother will like it?" Paul nodded, his eyes still fixed on the necklace. "She'd be a fool not to. The way it catches the light, it's almost magical." I smiled, pleased with his reaction. That's the Rose touch. The next week, I was at the James Mansion for another wedding planning session when I suddenly heard raised voices down the hall. Curious, I slipped out of the room and followed the sound. As I got closer, I could make out what they were saying. "You're being ridiculous, Paul," came Brian's deep voice. "This marriage is a golden opportunity. Don't tell me you're getting cold feet now." "It's not like that," Paul protested. "But nothing." Jessica's sharp voice cut in. "You've done well, darling. She's eating out of the palm of your hand. Soon we'll have everything we need." My heart pounded in my chest as I edged closer to the partially open door. Through the crack, I saw Paul pacing, sipping wine from a glass. "You should see how eagerly she's making that necklace," he said, and I felt my world tilt. "She has no idea she's handing over the keys to her entire legacy." Jessica's laugh was cold and cruel. "And to think we almost objected to you marrying that little nobody. I must say, Paul, your acting skills have improved tremendously. She actually believes you love her." I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a gasp. This couldn't be happening, it had to be a mistake. But Brian's next words shattered any doubt. Once we have the rose secret, we'll corner the market, he said, smug satisfaction in his voice. Who cares if her quaint little shop goes under? It's just business after all. I felt sick. My vision blurred with unshed tears as the full weight of their betrayal hit me. Paul, the man I thought I loved, the man I had agreed to marry, had been using me all along. The days following this shocking discovery were a blur of emotions and careful planning. On the surface, I played the part of the excited bride-to-be perfectly. I gushed over flower arrangements, fretted about seating charts, and continued working on Jessica's necklace. But inside, I was seething with rage and plotting my revenge. "How's the necklace coming along, darling?" Paul asked one evening, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I worked in my studio. I resisted the urge to pull away from his touch. "Almost done," I replied, forcing a smile. "Your mother's going to love it." Late into the night, after Paul had gone home, I started working on a new collection. Each piece was a work of art, telling the story of betrayal through intricate designs and carefully selected gems. But jewelry wasn't my only focus. One day, I hacked into Paul's home computer and downloaded all the files I could find. I spent hours going through James' company documents, searching for any signs of wrongdoing. It was tedious work, but my determination kept me going. One night, while reviewing a stack of financial reports, something caught my eye. The James had been systematically replacing high-quality gems with cheaper ones in their jewelry, scamming their customers out of millions. My next challenge was gathering evidence of their plot against me. I bought a small, high-quality recording device and carried it with me everywhere. It felt wrong, but I reminded myself that they started this game, I was just finishing it. As the final week before the wedding arrived, I put the finishing touches on my plan. I had evidence of the James gem scam, recordings of their scheme against me, and a collection that would shock San Jose's elite to its core. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect San Jose day. As I arrived at the beachfront venue, my heart was pounding, but my resolve was strong. I clutched the velvet-lined case containing my new collection and all the evidence I'd gathered like a lifeline. "Lily, there you are," Paul's best man, Eric, called out as I entered. "Everyone's been looking for you. Are you ready?" I gave him a tight smile. "More ready than you know." As I was ushered into a private room to wait, I could hear the murmur of guests arriving outside. San Jose's elite, all gathered to witness what they thought would be the society wedding of the year. If only they knew. The wedding march began to play, and I started my walk down the aisle. Faces turned to watch me, smiling and expectant. I saw Jessica and Brian in the front row, looking smug and satisfied. Paul waited at the altar, beaming at me. But as I reached the altar, instead of taking Paul's hand, I turned to face the guests. "I'm afraid there won't be a wedding today," I announced, my voice clear and strong. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Paul's face twisted in confusion. "Lily, what are you doing?" I ignored him and addressed the guests instead. "Instead, I'll be unveiling my newest collection, The Betrayal of Christ." With that, I opened my case and began to take out the pieces one by one, explaining the meaning behind each one. The snake bracelet stood for deceit, the shattered diamond ring symbolized broken trust, and the color-changing teardrop earrings reflected the shifting nature of lies. As I spoke, I saw the look of understanding and horror appear on the James faces, but I wasn't done yet. "For the grand finale," I said, pulling out Jessica's necklace, a special piece with a hidden message. I held it up to the light, revealing the word liar spelled out in pink diamonds. The crowd gasped, this time a mix of shock and admiration. "Lily, stop this nonsense right now," Brian James shouted, his face red with anger. But I was beyond stopping. I pulled out the documents I had gathered and the recordings I had made. "The James aren't just liars in love," I announced. "They're liars in business, too." I proceeded to lay out the evidence of their gem scam, playing recordings of their plot against me and Rose Gems. With each revelation, the crowd's murmurs grew louder, and shocked faces turned toward the James, seeking an explanation. "This is preposterous," Jessica shrieked, but her voice was shaking. As security began to escort the furious James out, I addressed the crowd one last time. I stand before you not as a bride, but as a businesswoman protecting her legacy. Rose Gems will continue to create beauty and brilliance without compromising our integrity. The aftermath was chaos. Reporters who had come to cover a society wedding found themselves with a much bigger story. Photos of my triumphant face and stunning jewelry were splashed across social media and magazines worldwide. In the days that followed what the press dubbed the wedding that wasn't, my life became a whirlwind of interviews, legal meetings, and damage control. The story exploded beyond San Jose, capturing national attention. My phone rang nonstop with calls from reporters, industry insiders, and even Hollywood producers interested in my story. I sat in my workshop, surrounded by half-finished pieces and stacks of newspapers, all featuring my face on the front page. The headlines ranged from Jewel of Deception, Heiress Exposes $1 Million Scam, to Love, Lies, and Luxury, the Rose James Saga. The James empire crumbled under the weight of the scandal, with multiple lawsuits filed against them. My best friend and now lawyer, Sandra, burst through the door, her arms full of more newspapers and legal documents. "Lily," she said, dropping everything on my workbench, "we need to talk strategy. The press is having a field day, and we've got at least a dozen interview requests over the next few weeks." I carefully chose which interviews to give. I talked about the need for honesty in the jewelry business, the importance of stricter rules, and my vision for a more ethical industry. As the weeks turned into months, the media attention started to fade, but my determination only grew stronger. I focused all my energy on Rose Gems, pushing myself to create more innovative designs while staying committed to ethical sourcing. One evening, as I was locking up the shop, a woman approached me. She looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place her. "Miss Rose," she said hesitantly, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to thank you." I tilted my head, confused. "Thank me? For what?" She smiled sadly. "I bought a James piece for my 25th wedding anniversary. After your expose, I had it appraised. It turns out the stone wasn't nearly as valuable as they claimed. Thanks to you, I was able to get my money back." I felt a lump form in my throat. "I'm glad I could help." As she walked away, I realized that my actions had affected real people, not just faceless customers. The scandal that had almost ruined me had instead sparked positive change. And I, Lily Rose, was just getting started.